Aquaman Andromeda, issue 3, Ram V writing, Christian Ward on the art. And the start of this issue kind of like is young Arthur getting told by his father this story that he heard from Arthur's mother about how Atlantis sank and why it sank. And it turns out it's because there was sorcery in Atlantis back in the day. People used magic. And it was basically discovered over time that anytime someone tapped into the magic side of things, they were tapping into what they called the dead world. And that was reaching out back and creating the things. And then you can kind of see where this is going if you've been reading the story up until now, is that this dead world is this thing that's in this ship. And basically, because whoever it was at the time was in charge...
it's Arion, right?
There you go.
The Great King of Atlantis. But real quick, I want to point out that they're seeming to do a new spelling that makes it look a lot more Atlantean, right? The Arion that we always see is the A-R-I-O-N, but here they've done the A-H-R apostrophe. They also did that at the beginning of Batman v Robin when they go to Atlantis. So I'm wondering if that's going to be a thing for DC going forward. Of this is, to show the old King of Atlantis. Just a continuity thing.
Well, anyway, he basically fears that Atlantis will sink. In fact, the whole city fears it, because this is back when Atlantis wasn't, was on,
right.
It was on the surface.
It was above the surface. Yeah, it was on the surface.
So it sinks, and that's why Atlantis sinks. And obviously, they realize why it's done this. So they built a ship and they launched Dead World into space so that it can never do anything again. And I like the little tease at the end as well, that the reason why it came back is because just as it left, he dreamt one night, he had a nightmare that it landed in the ocean again one day, and that's why eventually it came back. So it's like a really cool backstory to all this stuff going on. We still have Black Manta coming in, and he ends up killing like half the crew of the Andromeda. And we have like the ships up above launch like missiles or torpedoes at the ship, and Aquaman actually gets knocked out, like saving them with his trident.
Yeah.
And so it all comes down to Yvette and the older guy, Ivanov, I would say.
Yeah, something along those lines. We get his backstory.
That comes later, yeah. But they're going in with the core of the ship to try and blow up the dead world so that it can't do anything else. And Aquaman's going to hold off whatever the thing creates, which ends up being a monstrous version of him. And what's cool about that is that he's not sure if that's like his fear or Black Manta's fear, because Black Manta's also there. So you get this kind of like three-way fight between Aquaman, Black Manta, and this big monstrous version of Arthur. Because it comes back
very Cthulhu-esque.
He's got like a Cthulhu beard, yeah. But this comes back into play from something else that his dad said to him in the flashback at the start, which Arthur asks, "Am I a boy or am I a king?" And this at the end here is like he feels like he's a boy being attacked by the big king version of Aquaman. So there's kind of it's tying back into that as well, which is really cool. So no, all of this is really great, and it's got this thing where the old guy, like you can kind of tell it's building up to him like sacrificing himself to save Yvette, and he tells the story like what he keeps seeing this girl in this yellow raincoat holding like a doll, and he tells this awful story in the 90s where he was with his crew at the tail end of the war, was ferrying illegal immigrants across the sea, and this girl was one of the passengers on this little dinghy that they were sort of towing through the water, and because they were under threat of being caught by the Italians, his commanding officer told him to cut the line. And that's where the first flashback, when he's telling this story, ends, is that he feels guilty because he cut the line and he was looking at this little girl's face in the water.
As she drifts away.
Boat. But then it gets worse. It turns out that they can't have anyone find this thingy of people. So his commanding officer makes him shoot all of the people on it. And so he has to shoot everyone on this boat, and then ending with the little girl. So he has this memory. So this is his redemption. He has to like redeem himself by trying to save the world by stopping this thing. So it presents this really tragic backstory, and this is where the art from Ward really excels, because the images of like him with these just the lights of the ship behind him, the silhouettes, the dinghy drifting off into the water. It's also atmospheric. Like all of this is atmospheric. It's what we've loved about this book since issue 1 is just the atmosphere around everything.
And the tone of it is more horrific than any of the monsters, any of the other violence. Is that dinghy floating away? man, it just gives me chills.
It's the same with because there's early on, there's the guy on the Andromeda who's freaking out, and he accidentally shoots one of the ladies. That's with the Yvette, and he's like, "Oh, she came right at me. You saw." So everyone's starting to panic and lose their minds, and it's a really good example of like this is why the dead world has to be destroyed, because if this affects the rest of the world, like the world is screwed. Like it's not going to survive. So there's a really good build up of that sort of stuff. The colors are glorious. When Aquaman's like swimming off to go to this dead world, all the purple in the water. Purples and blues and pinks and greens. There's a lot of really. The palette is very varied and really paints this kind of like alien world underwater. And there's that great 2-page spread as Aquaman's walking towards this big evil Cthulhu-looking Aquaman, which is really great. Also, I just noticed that Black Manta's got what looks like a lightsaber in his hand. So, point that out as well. So, there's a lot of great action here where, like, Yvette's trying to swim away from the ship but the dead stream's on, and she's basically not going to make it, but then just at that last moment, Aquaman grabs her and swims really far. He's also holding a Black Manta, so he's saving him too, because he's Aquaman, he's a hero, he's not going to let him die.
I also like how kind of quiet Aquaman is in this, right? He's a man of very little words, and it's his actions. It gives him this presence
you
don't normally get with him.
He has this mythical quality, which is kind of like the last page, even Yvette, when she wakes up with this, like, in this village with some Inuits or whoever it is, she is like, hey, like, was that all real? Was Aquaman like a dream? And the woman says, no, he was real. Like, he's as real as any story in the water can be. And that's a big thematic thing in this as well, is the idea that the water remembers. Aquaman knows her father's name at one point, and he's like, the water remembers. Like, partly that's why she's so scared of losing, is that anything is into this, because the bomb they're setting off isn't really a bomb, it's actually a singularity, so it's effectively making like a temporary black hole in the ocean that'll suck in the dead world.
The dead world,
and it's kind of this idea that if she gets sucked in, like, she's the only person who remembers her father, so if she gets sucked in, then it's like her father's dying for a second time, and she kind of hates that. So she's really determined to try and stop that. So there's a lot of emotional weight to the idea of that, and the idea of stories that exist in the water. And at the end, Aquaman's still this mythical being that helped her maintain her father's memory. I don't know. There's a lot of sweet, big, thematic ideas to it. They make it all feel larger than life, which is what I've liked since the first issue had the big Kraken monster show up, and it all felt very ethereal and otherworldly. I like that feeling's still here, even though it explained a lot of what was going on. It never lost that mystique, and I think that's very impressive.
And it's Ram V playing with these ideas, right? Not ideas, but like the idea of ideas. And here with the water remembering, and this dark world unleashing everyone's fears upon the world, if it gets powerful enough. Because the last time it was this powerful, it sank Atlantis.
Yeah, literally.
So like, Tim doing that thing that I love, where he's playing with ideas. So, and here we get to see Aquaman fight a Cthulhu version of himself, which is super cool. And Ward, for as ethereal and stuff as it is, it's also cool to see him draw these big monsters.
Oh yeah.
So
also I love how much of a. I was gonna say, I love how much of a bastard Black Manta is in this. Like, he's like killing crew members. He's planning on killing everyone on the ship, and it feels like he'll do it. It feels real. It feels like he
feels like a proper pirate, right? Yeah. He's like Captain Blood. He's gonna go on there, no quarter given, and take out, But yeah, it's MV just coming up with wins all the time.
Yeah, no, I've loved this miniseries. It kind of feels weird because obviously it's been very spread out over 6 months or whatever it's been, but like, this is like something I'd rank up there for him. Like, I would. Yeah. I mean, I think Swamp Thing's my favorite thing he's done, but I think this may be my second favorite Ram V thing. I might put this over Catwoman at a push, but it just makes me more excited for more Ram V work.
Yeah, right.
So, and the art's great. The color palette is just gorgeous.
Yeah,
throughout.
I mean, that's Word too. A lot of the purples, blues, pinks, very oceany, watery. That side of the color wheel. All playing with each other very well. It did such a
good job of feeling like a science fiction story, despite the fact that it's just underwater. And I know it's like a spaceship technically, but by the end we kind of know it's came from Atlantis, so it's not really an alien thing. But it doesn't matter; it still has that feeling the entire time.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's got like like kind of like The Thing with the isolation and whatnot. Definitely Alien in there with the crew. And,
oh yeah, no, there's a lot.
Stuff.
There's a lot of space movies where they're finding like a derelict ship and investigating. This is totally like. I mean, there's a character named Burke, which is obviously an Aliens character, so that's a very intentional reference.
So yeah, so it definitely hits that, but also with the whole mythology and what does it mean for Aquaman? Is he a boy? Is he a king? And all of that, and just his mythical status at the end there.
I think what was really nice about that is that it set this idea up that he is very much a human with a father, but to others he's a king. Under the water, he is this mythical thing. It sort of like it did this really interesting trick where it made him feel both human and relatable, but it kept his aura for all the other characters, so he always felt like this mythical thing in the story.
It made him distant too. Yeah, where you couldn't get too close to see him. You're kind of getting glimpses, like the crew is watching him outside of the ship.
Yeah.
So,
but it gave him enough humanity for the reader, I think, so that we got the benefit of both worlds, bizarrely, which is really impressive. I don't think normally you can do that.
No, and that is Aquaman in a crux, right? He's born of two worlds. He's the the surface person and the Atlantean.
Oh,
royalty.
Sure, yeah, you can say that, but writing it so that you feel both things at the same time is a very different thing.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever. I'm trying to think, because maybe during the early Rebirth stuff we kind of got that. I don't remember, but
not like this, because I'm not talking about the logistics of like what he actually is. I'm saying at the same time as a reader, you feel he's both human and relatable, but also big and mythical. And I don't think you usually get that in good writing for most characters, never mind Aquaman specifically.
Right.
Like in theory, you should feel that for Superman a lot, but I don't think I think some writers are good at making him feel human, and it's good in that sense. Some writers are good at making him feel big and mythical, and that's a different thing. I think it's rare that you get to feel both at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I felt here with Aquaman, which is impressive. So
yeah.
All right, what are you giving Aquaman Andromeda issue 3?
I'm giving this a 9.
I am also going to give this a 9. Fantastic.